Okay, let me start with just a short introduction. My name's Kristen Anton. I am the Community Knowledge Manager for HereDocs, and this is our first of hopefully many online community discussions where we'll be talking with human rights organizations and practitioners and developers about managing information and human rights documentation. I'm going to share a brief presentation to kick this off. So these online discussions are meant to bring together different practitioners to share their experiences and knowledge on information management, and this topic is on managing contacts. So we have some CRM super users, we have hopefully some developers in the audience, and we have some human rights practitioners to talk about their experiences. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. This webinar is public and it's being recorded, so please be careful what you share. I will put together a written summary of what's discussed on this discussion, and I'll be posting that on the website on the same URL that you are using to watch this. And that should be up in maybe about a week. Also, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again. If you want to participate in the discussion, and I hope that you will, please use Twitter and use the hashtag HereDocs to ask any questions or add any comments to the discussion. And we'll have a lot of time at the end, hopefully 20 to 30 minutes to go through those. Or if you don't want to be so public about your question, please feel free to go ahead and send me an email, and I will be checking that throughout the discussion today. So let me start by introducing us to the idea of CRMs for human rights organizations. CRM stands for Client Relationship Management, or Constituent Relationship Management, or Customer Relationship Management. It totally depends on your business, and the abbreviation is CRM. And for our purposes today, when we use the term CRM, we're talking about a technology platform to manage contacts, the contact information. And this concept really comes from the business sector, but there's a lot of reasons why this is useful for human rights organizations and other nonprofits. And here's a couple of the reasons that I've listed here. It really helps to target and communicate with your allies for mobilizing, organizing, and advocacy. So you can send to a really specific group of people. You can send them a targeted message. You can use email. Sometimes you can use SMS. It saves a lot of time as opposed to going into your email and sending out individual emails. It also helps you to understand your relationships better, between those relationships that are between your organization and your peers, or your organization and your allies, or maybe your clients and your donors. By being able to monitor and track all this data and those relationships, you will hopefully gain some new insights and be able to do your work more effectively. It also helps you to manage programmatic tasks like organizing events and interviews. It can also help to organize offline activities and can send mass emails usually. And then finally, it's also just a basic Rolodex. So I can see when my colleague last contacted this person and what they talked about, and I can also have the updated contact information on each person. There are a lot of features that could come with the CRM, but here's a few of the key ones that we look for within human rights organizations. The ability to create dynamic relationships between contacts. You can tag and categorize contacts. A lot of times there's email integration so that you can store your emails that are attached to contacts and also send emails from your CRM. Some of them will allow you to send text messages. Some have analytics. Managing events is super handy. Managing your donor contacts, and then case management. That could be legal cases or psychosocial cases. Depends on the kind of work that you do. There's also a lot of CRM platforms out there, and we're going to be touching on just a few today, but I hope that we might be able to follow up with future webinars so that we can include more of these platforms. So today we're mostly focused on CiviCRM and Salesforce, only because those are the presenters that we were able to recruit for this discussion. But there are a lot more. PressPoint is a WordPress-based CRM. Red Hen CRM is Drupal-based. There's Zoho, Highrise, and Microsoft Dynamics. These are all like really core CRM platforms. But then if we go broader, we can find other platforms that include CRM features, but are often even bigger than that. And a lot of these target nonprofits. And I know that there are human rights organizations that use a combination of these. Okay, so now let me introduce our presenters today. The first presentation is going to come from Uganda. We have Neil, who's the tech program manager for Defend Defenders, and he's helped to set up and configure and maintain Civi CRM. We also have Miriam and Leon of Defend Defenders, and these are protection program officers and Civi CRM power users. So we're really looking forward to learning from them how they set up Civi for their organization. And then next we have Helix, who will be presenting on Civi CRM, and Helix is the tech manager for Media Mobilizing project based in the United States, and they have been leading the organization's move from Salesforce to Civi, so that should be super interesting. Next, we have Chris Doughton, who is the senior manager for the technology and innovation at the National Democratic Institute, also based in the United States. And Chris has worked with organizations around the world on Civi, which is a Civi CRM distribution. So we'll learn from him how those organizations are using this. And then finally, we have Lisa Gervais, who is the principal consultant for information ecology, and she's worked with many organizations to select their CRM and to help them make it work for them. So she'll be sharing some good advice and some tips for how we can do that well. And now I'm going to hand it off to Neil. Neil, I'm going to unmute you. Unless I just muted you. I'll unmute you.
Yes.
There we go, sorry.
I hope we're coming in well. So thank you, Kristen. I'm called Neil Blazovic. I'm here with Italian Sequels
and Mariam Nachibuka.
So as you can see, it's evening here in Uganda, but greetings from Kampala. So let me see if I can get the screen share. Okay, we're coming in all right?
Yes, great.
Great. We are presenting from an organization called Defend Defenders. We're rebranding from the Eastern Horn of Defenders project, us as one or the other. And we've been using databases or CRMs for going on 7-8 years now. So we're happy to share this experience with you all. Maybe Marian can start by telling a bit more about the organization and why we even have the system in place.
Hi, everyone. So Defend Defenders works within the region, the Eastern Horn region of Africa, with 11 countries: Somalia, Somaliland, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Djibouti, yeah. And so what it does is it helps defenders, it enables defenders to be able to continue their work in a safe environment. And so the protection program was set up, which is the network's overall objective. And what the protection program does is that it supports defenders, human rights defenders across the region with capacity building, with migration, in case they have migration issues, in case they need
family support,
yeah, and all that. Yeah. So the protection program comes in, and that's where me and Leon mainly work. So we were facing issues trying to keep track of all the cases we get, and reporting on all of them properly and giving our donors proper reports. And so we really needed a proper database that could help us with this. And CV has really, really been helpful. Yeah.
So we, like I said, we've been doing this for about 8 years. And as Miriam said, we approached this as a case database in that we had these grants and we needed to keep track of them and store the information about the grants in a single place. So at first, we approached a local developer to come up with something. It was web-based, it was hosted locally, but at some point we lost track of this developer. It was hard to get changes made. It became expensive to change anything. It wasn't very sophisticated. So back in 2012, we connected with Heradox, and we looked at their database called OpenEvSys, and it seemed to be very comprehensive. It had these built-in lists of all these different human rights bits of information. It was structured around human rights violations and interventions. So it seemed really perfect, and we spent a good 4 years with it. But really, the challenge we had with OpenEvSys was that it was so big, forms to fill in to enter a single case, and it became quite cumbersome to manage our grants program with it. So just as of last year, we've switched to CiviCRM. So we're joining the club with most of the other people here. And of course, CiviCRM has its own challenges. We decided to self-host. This was based on security considerations. We didn't want to have information about vulnerable people out there on the internet, sitting on a server that we weren't totally in control of. So self-hosting gave us the advantage of also not needing to use the internet to access our database. So when the connection is down, we can still access it. It's nice and fast from a local server, but then we're also ultimately responsible for securing it.
We use CRM to mainly the contacts, our grants, event activities, as well as easy access to the contacts saved on the database. Under contacts, it helps us to manage our clients' information and access it whenever needed, government officials as well as other stakeholders. The grant part of it help us to have access and safe guide information regarding our interventions on the ground for our clients, our emergency interventions and protection program within Defend Defenders. All the events that organize, such as meetings with our client, human rights defenders, meeting with other partners, the government officials, as well as donors, have to be saved under events, as well as any other activities that is organized. So it's really help us to keep track of every activities, every function within the organization.
So here's just a couple snapshots from our database. So we use the grants module to keep track of our individual grants. And this is just a small section of the overall form. But we found it fairly easy to build the form and tailor it to the needs. And this was done in collaboration with the protection department, who are the users of the database. Leon mentioned activities. So we're using that the activities module to add these bits of miscellaneous information about interventions that we've offered to an individual human rights defender. So you can see kind of broken down by department. If we provide technological support to someone, then we record if we're hosting their website, if we audited their organization, or we help them some other way. And then for protection, if they physically accompany them, if they refer them somewhere else, if they do an immigration case support, then we record it using these activities. And here we're showing our tag structure. So we just break things down by individual organization or service provider, and just we have a complete taxonomy, which helps us when we're traveling somewhere. We can find someone who works in a certain area or service provider for a certain category.
Yeah, and so on the part of how what's working well for us so far, the transparency bit, it's allowing us to be able to connect together as various departments within Defend Defenders. It's not just a protection program that is in there. We have advocacy, we have ICT, we have capacity building, and so all of us fit into the database, and we are all able to monitor each other's work, and we're able to see what work a particular department or what type of interaction a particular department had with our HRDs. HRDs is human rights defenders. And then it also helps us with the reports and analysis. I mean, we need this for our donors, and we need to break them down with gender, countries, breaking it down also to the areas that they focus on, that they're working in. For example, we have journalists. So it helps us with that. And then also it also helps us track our historical interactions. This has helped us in a way that sometimes we get people that come back more than once. And with the database, with this database, you're able to, it will tell you in case you already have had interaction with that particular human rights defender. And yeah, so it's really working.
Yeah, so we're having lots of successes with it, but also so many challenges. And going back to the topic of this discussion, we'd say it's working quite well as a case database, but the context management is so complicated, and we haven't assigned one staff member to do data entry. We don't have an intern working on it. And the contacts just keep on coming and coming. Every time there's a training, every time people go to meetings, there's so many contacts, but we haven't figured out really a good process for entering them, and whether that should be centralized in one person or if the whole staff should be responsible for it. And then there's so many complexities to working with people. So the example here we have is a Congolese human rights defender who's been pushed into exile. Now they're living in Nairobi, and they're working for, say, Transparency International on a project that's in Tanzania. So you have to keep track of someone's country of origin, maybe if we gave them a grant, but we need to know their address so that we can meet them if we're somewhere. And if we're discussing a project in Tanzania, we would want to get in touch with them. So is it feasible to keep track of all these things? And yeah, other technical issues is that it's not very easy to update the database. Yeah, setting usage standards around the whole thing. More challenges is the backlog of cases in previous databases. So we have so many cases from OpenEBSys. So now do we hire an SQL developer to import it? Do we do it manually? Another big challenge is the emailing system, and if or how it should tie in to a mailing list. So because we self-host, we decided to switch off the emailing capabilities. And the main reason for that was that, well, one, there's a risk of kind of accidentally sending out emails or many emails, which may have happened accidentally a couple times. But then also all of the spam regulations and systems, we didn't want to get our IPs blacklisted by not having like proper domain pointers, and it was really just kind of above our ability to properly set up our office as a mail server. Another challenge is that even when it's working well, you want it to do more. So it's working well as a case database, but one example is that we want it to fit into our management processes, so that it can make all of our work easier. So we would want to get notifications when it's time to do something. And some of that is is available in Civi CRM and other things. Maybe there's plugins or you develop it, but you just have this feature creep. And lastly, Civi CRM is just a bit funky. It's like when you have you're inputting a Jennifer and there's 10 other Jennifers, and then it's like this complicated, confusing to the users process of, you say, save matching contact, and what does that really mean? So some advice that we could share. You're definitely going to iterate on your database project. And so because this is our third system, we probably got it right just based on the previous experience and looking at what we didn't like before. Assigning clear responsibility, and also being able to coordinate between departments. So you have focal points among the technical side and the users. Dedicating staff time and money, giving training, creating standards for usage, and having some kind of a quality control process. And last but not least, it's going to be hard. Don't give up.
I love it. Thank you guys so much. These challenges and requirements, it all sounds so familiar. I mean, you guys probably know, but so many other organizations struggle with these things. And I hope we can dive in with more detail in the questions and answers section at the end. But thank you. This is really, really helpful. So now we're going to move on to Helix. Helix, take it away.
All right. So hi, I'm Helix Chase. I'm the technology manager at the Media Mobilizing Project. And I'm going to talk for a couple minutes about what we're doing using Civi, why we moved from Salesforce, and then I'm going to hop into a slideshow with some screenshots of our install and my favorite parts about it. So from our mission statement directly, the Media Mobilizing Project, since its founding, has used strategic media arts communications strategy to intervene in critical human rights struggles from public education to healthcare, media reform, and public services. And we do this through working with low-wage workers, youth, immigrants, other communities on media collaborations, narrative development, training, and organizing projects. So when I started working and managing tech at MMP about 2 years ago, we were using a Salesforce nonprofit starter pack install, which had been developed 5 years prior and was built really to suit our fundraising needs, specifically our grassroots fundraising needs. And as our organizational needs have shifted, it became clear that we needed a database that could handle our organizing and relationship information, and also that our fundraising information was intrinsically linked with our organizing strategy. Well, more so that our fundraising strategy was intrinsically linked with our organizing. So our current database install is a Civi CRM install. It's relatively new. We've been using it since July, and we're definitely still in a culture shift period as we work on getting staff used to using a database in our day-to-day work. While we had the database on Salesforce previously, it was not being widely used by staff. And so getting into the habit of using the database on a daily basis has definitely been one of our largest challenges as an organization. So what do we use it for? The database is where our people live. It's a place where we can track information about the people we work with, who we meet, the organizations that we're working with. And some of the biggest benefits is our ability to store institutional memory and to reflect our relationship. And then it's also the place where we track information about our grassroots fundraising and our foundation fundraising. And we're able to keep that all in one place and connect it to the people that we're working with, which strengthens our fundraising from on the whole perspective. In the best case scenario, the database is a way that if something were to suddenly happen to one of our staff members, others could pick up their work and relationships quickly and easily. So we moved to Civi from Salesforce because the Salesforce nonprofit interface was clunky for us. They used language that was really built around sales and fundraising and not organizing. And so that really, it didn't suit our needs and it really rubbed our staff the wrong way. And at the end of the day, one of the most important factors for us became not buying into a business model that felt incongruous with our ethics as an organization. We had outgrown what we were going to be able to get out of the free nonprofit starter pack from Salesforce. So no matter which way we went in that decision, we were going to have to sink money into it. And so we would rather sink our money into Civi CRM developers that tended to align more with our own politics and ethics. In terms of management of our database, we contract with a firm that set up the database and does the hard customization and ongoing maintenance. And then we host online in the cloud on a Linode, which is, and it's hosted alongside and as part of our website. And we run backups to Amazon Web Services. And I handle all of our in-house management, data cleaning, and light customization and maintenance. And definitely one big advantage over Salesforce is that it's been significantly easier for me to handle and learn a lot of the maintenance that we need to do. And so we can get that done in-house. So I'm going to switch over to some slides so that we can look at what that looks like for us. All right, so as I said, this is where our people live. So here's my contact record in the database. It allows us to track both kind of stock information that Civi comes with. So up here, we have things like email addresses, phone numbers, all of which are built into Civi. And then down here, we're able to really easily set up customized fields that allow us to track information that's really specific to our needs. So for instance, because we do a lot of organizing in Philadelphia, it's really important for us to know what city council districts people live in. And so we're able to put a field for that in the database and then very easily bring up people by city council district. So if we need to go talk to a specific city councilor, we can bring up everybody who is in our database who lives in that district and then talk to them about, do you want to go talk to your counselor about something? One of the biggest shifts for us in our current iteration of the database, and it's not that Salesforce couldn't do this, but we were not utilizing this factor, is the ability to dynamically track relationships. And so we can really know how people know each other. And that gives us a much broader picture of who different people are. So for instance, we work with a lot of people who are interconnected in familial relationships. We're able to track that information. We're able to track employment information. And we're able to track the cultivator relationship, which is a custom field that we use to refer to who in our organization has the strongest ties and relationships to that person. So if we need to ask them for something important, or if we're asking a fundraising ask, we default and the cultivator will usually ask that person for the information. And in terms of relationships, it becomes very handy when we need to talk to people to know that, to know previous relationships as well as current relationships. So we know that somebody who used to work at X foundation now works at X community organization and has a personal friendship with X board member. And that becomes very critical information when we call them up. We're able to track histories of people's relationships with our organization. So we can see an event history here of having attended multiple events over the last couple of years. So we see 2012, 2014, 2015, different events that this person has attended. And then one of my really favorite parts about Civi CRM is the direct integration into our website. So previously we had been using Eventbrite when we needed to host events and collect registration information, fees, etc. Now what we're able to do is to collect that information directly on our website. People never have to leave, and the information feeds right back into our database. So I fill out this form here. If I'm registering for an event, I can update my interests, and that information will go straight into the database, and it will update my contact record. And it allows us to take donations, and all of that information goes straight into the database. So over here we have our standard donate form on our website, but it is also really easy for us to set up specific donation forms for something that's very targeted. So for instance, this is for donating to the specific education fund. And then when donations go through here, they're automatically marked as part of that fund, and it becomes really easy for us to keep those separate. And it's allowed us to do things like have personal campaign pages. So in this past winter, we were able to have our staff and volunteers and core group of supporters each create personal fundraising pages that all went towards our broader end of the year fundraising goals. And so here we see one of those pages. It makes it really easy for people to incorporate their own picture, write about why this work is important to them and why their people should donate money, and then actually even show their progress. And then we're also able to see information really easily about contributions, what's going on in the database, all of that stuff, right when you sign in using dashlets, which is another one of my favorite parts. And so these are some examples where you can just see really quickly when you sign in who's donated recently, where are those donations coming from. We also have the ability to assign soft credits. Those are very useful in terms of tracking household giving. So if there's a couple who are donating together, but the payment is actually coming through one person's name, we're able to see that both of them made that move together. So we don't look up somebody and say, they've been a supporter for years, why aren't they donating to us? And then when we look at their spouse, we see that actually they are. But we can see that information up front, or we can see the person who solicited a donation. So this comes through our personal donation pages. Anytime somebody donated, whoever's personal donation page that was got a soft credit, so we can really easily see what the impact of their personal donation and campaigning page was. And I think that is the end of my slides. So how do we stop screen share?
A good question.
Hey, I'm back. Yeah, so that is how we're using Civi CRM. And hopefully if folks have questions, we'll get to those later.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was really informative. It's like really inspiring to see how you guys have been able to customize Civi for your specific needs. That's amazing to know that it can be done and it is being done and that it's working. I love it. Okay, let's hand this off now to Chris. I'm going to share your...
Hi, folks.
There we go. Go ahead. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for NDI, the National Democratic Institute. We work in about 60 countries around the world with civil society or political organizations. And at the end of the day, virtually every group we work with would be better off being able to manage their contacts appropriately. Everybody is stronger if they know who their people are, how to reach them, and how to kind of stay in touch with them, keep a finger on the pulse of their supporters, or occasionally keeping them tabs on their enemies as well. So I'm going to just be pretty brief and informal here, and so we can get to questions. But NDI has been working closely with Civi CRM for, I guess, about the last 5 years now. And so NDI globally is involved with a couple hundred groups every year, I suppose. And so we had a need for solving some of these common problems that they face when it comes to contact management or communications or data tracking or casework management across these different groups. So working together with the Civi CRM core team, we've taken their base software and tried to adapt it to the international development world. Now, for any of you out there in the audience, there's one great truth that you need to realize up front, which is CRM sucks. It's always a pain in the butt. There's no two ways about it. One of my favorite quotes was from one of our country directors, a very savvy person who was experimenting both with Civi and with Salesforce concurrently. When I got her frank opinions on what she thought about the two systems, she's like, well, they're both kind of terrible, and so why don't we go with the free one? And so it was that then NDI decided to move away from any sort of big corporate use of Salesforce, and again, dive in deep with Civi CRM. So what we've been trying to do with the core team is adapt Civi to the common use cases for the international development community. A lot of the groups with whom we work are not very sophisticated. This is usually the first time that they're using CRM. If you're lucky, before this, they've been working with spreadsheets, but generally speaking, it's some combination of, boxes full of cards, the phone numbers in the boss's cell phone, old sign-in sheets they go rummaging through, and so on. And so we've been trying to hit this kind of lowest common denominator of partner organizations. And so as everybody else has described, there's ways that you can take and adjust and improve Civi. And that's one of the great things about working with an open source project like this, is that the core team is very responsive, interested in making their system work for better use cases. And so we've been engaged in a lot of simplification of the system, sometimes just turning off huge swaths of functionality. I've been working with them to translate Civi into other languages. So we've helped support the translation into Arabic, Russian, and improvements of French and Spanish translations of Civi. And trying to then figure out how people communicate, particularly in the developing world. So we work with Civi to take their email engine and then adapt it to use SMS. So one of the most compelling things that we find with Civi these days is that you can use the same sort of contact management, targeting, and so on to engage in SMS messaging campaigns with your supporters or partners. And so that's something that a lot of our folks find useful. Now, Neil was describing a little bit their challenges with hosting in-house. That's beyond the capabilities of a lot of the organizations with whom we work. And so NDI has been very involved in a project over the last couple of years that we're calling DEM Tools, or our Democracy Toolkit, which is taking or occasionally building open source software that solves some of these common needs like contact management, and then making it accessible in a scalable way to basically as many organizations as would need it. So I'm sure that Kristen will be sending around some links for folks after this, but our main project is at dem.tools, and you'll find a link there to Civi. So we've set up a cloud-based scalable hosting infrastructure for Civi, and we're currently running Civi systems for about 80 different groups internationally, concurrently in real time. So and with, I don't know, some tens of millions of contacts under management across them. So we've had big programs in Ukraine, Morocco, the DRC, Nicaragua, some other closed societies that I won't mention specifically, and so on. And when I think about the project overall, when we're trying to think about the impact that it's had, first of all, it takes a lot of time and work. I think that's something that's come up in my friend's comments here earlier, but adopting CRM requires a huge workflow change for an organization. And it's going to be a pain in the butt for a while to get over that hump. Once you're there, you can't imagine how you would live without it, because of all the benefits of knowing who your people are, how to target them, how to reach them, what your history is with them. But there's a lot of time required up front, so don't get too discouraged, as Neil was saying. Don't give up. You'll be able to get there with it. But with that, then they've been able to, we think, really reach their people more effectively and understand what their needs and problems are. So, for a lot of the groups with whom we work, they're kind of grassroots civil society organizations that are trying to make a difference in their communities, and contact management has really helped with that. So we continue our engagement with Civi, the core team, to help improve the overall product. Strongly encourage anybody else, if you find common problems that you think want to be solved, see if you can work with them to upstream them into the core code base. This is partly a matter of laziness. You don't want to maintain your own code. So by doing so, you're able to then have them carry the burden forward and let it get shared with many of our colleagues around the world. And one last point that I'd make is that security is incredibly important with CRM products. That's something that we've heard mentioned already. And that's something that we grapple with our hosted version of Civi. But for everyone, when you get all that stuff consolidated, especially for some of our friends who are working with possibly under some threat from national intelligence services. Civi solved a lot of problems. So they weren't having their offices raided and computers being stolen from under their desks, which is good. But then it does give them the convenient consolidation of putting everything together in one place online. So for anyone out there who's curious about Civi, about using the systems, possibly about getting some help with hosting or any of the challenges we faced with security of translation, I'd certainly encourage you to reach out and contact me after the presentation here. So I think with that, I'll hand it back to our fearless leader here, and thanks all very much for letting me join you.
Thanks, Chris. Super interesting. I'd love to hear more about how you guys have done these translations and what that looks like when you're rolling it out for groups in other countries. If it's just as easy as like a click of a button, like, okay, you need the French version, here you go. But let's dive into that during the questions portion. So let me move over to Lisa. 1 second here, present to everyone. Okay, Lisa, please go ahead. Thanks.
Hi, thanks. So my name is Lisa Gervais. I am a principal at Information Ecology, which is a small consultancy that works with a wide variety of nonprofit and mostly social justice organizing groups on figuring out what they need from their information systems and how to get it. So we do a lot with contact management and CRM. And so I'm just going to share some kind of principles and tips for success that I've learned over my work with a number of organizations. And not surprisingly, everything I have to say is super aligned with what everyone has said so far about the uses of CRM, where it's valuable for organizations, and also the pitfalls. I especially love, Chris, what you said about, CRM is pretty much terrible. And I always say, it's kind of pick your poison, and each system has its own pros and cons, and you really have to look at the cons and just pick the one that, you're kind of most willing to live with organizationally. So also, I just want to note that everything I have to say, it really is all true regardless of what system you use. I mean, we've talked mostly about Civi today and a little bit about Salesforce, but all these things are true no matter what you're using. So I have found in all my work and a little bit of independent research with organizers about their database use is that there are three really key, there's kind of a three-legged stool of making a CRM work in your organization. And there's the culture piece, which is really the culture of use. The database is central to the organization. Everybody knows about it. They value it as a central piece of infrastructure. Then there's the strategy piece, which is you know what you're collecting and why, and it's aligned with your mission, your theory of change, your organizational strategy, the daily work that you're doing. And then there's the implementation piece, which is that your instance actually, it has the fields and the data structures necessary for you to collect and store and report on what you're collecting in the ways that support your overall organizational strategy. And if any one of those legs is missing, your organization's going to struggle because it's just a key piece. And all of those three elements really are mutually supportive of each other too when they're all working. So some quick tips for success. Mariam and Leon and Neil alluded to this in the difficulty of kind of keeping everything updated and staffing decisions. Make sure it's in people's work plans. Everything about data, the collection, the entry, the analysis it's a real set of activities that takes time and needs to be staffed. And so if you don't plan for that, then it's something that tends to just get pushed down on people's to-do lists, and you don't get the benefits like the institutional memory and the great reporting that you can get from a CRM. It also means time at staff meetings and when colleagues talk to each other, either in supervisor check-ins or just kind of peer, depending on how your organization is structured, just space internally for folks to talk about where their challenges are, what's working for them, what's not working for them, so you can try to try to solve any problems that are coming up. You also want to make sure there's support available to fix bugs in your database. The best database, every piece of software in the world is going to have problems sometimes. And you want to make sure that people know what to do when a problem arises, when a bug comes up, behavior's not expected, or something's blocking their work. There needs to be something in place to plan to fix it. Training available to staff, both initial training when they're introduced to the system and ongoing training as features change and as you maybe add more activities you're doing in the database. Folks need time and support and training on how to do those things. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be simply as much as like the person in the organization who knows the most about the database and is the most trained trains others. It doesn't have to be a formal thing. It just needs to happen. Protocols for usage should be, you should have shared understanding, shared understanding among staff, and they should be written down somewhere, documented, just so when new people come in, they can learn them, and also when there's any confusion or questions, you can kind of consult the documentation. It just really helps people stay when just everyone knows, like, oh, this is what goes in the database, and this is what this field is for, and the way to get there is documentation. Another big tip for success is to make sure there's a feedback loop established. This kind of relates to bug fixing, but it's larger than that. It's so, when people are like, hey, this piece of the database is not working for me anymore because my program area has changed, or I'm thinking about that big tag list that Defenders talked about. If you start doing a slightly different kind of work, or meeting people who don't fit into your taxonomy of tags, you need to have a feedback loop for like, hey, I need a new tag. You generally don't want people just adding tags willy-nilly. You want to have a process where you get together as a group and decide, oh, okay, we're doing this different kind of work now, so here are the things that need to change in the database to keep our database aligned with happening in our programs. And so, as you can tell, it's all a lot of work. And so what's really helpful is, in order to make sure that all of this work happens, that it's really a best practice, although I know this isn't possible in all organizations, but to have one person in the organization who can be kind of the owner, and I use that in quotes because it's not about ownership, but it's about someone who's really holding all of the different pieces of work. And being the kind of the glue that holds the human parts of the system together, and stores the knowledge and makes sure that people know what they need to know. And having a single person who kind of oversees the CRM can be a really fantastic strategy to make that happen. There's actually two other quick points I want to make, and then I want to move it to questions. And there are two basic ways, in my opinion, to approach a CRM database. One is as a container for results. Like, these are the people we talked to. These are the people who came to events. This is what happened. This is, kind of what we achieved with our contacts. And then there is a more process-based approach where you kind of enter data as it's happening, and you're tracking kind of relationships with people as they maybe move through a pipeline. Like, maybe pipeline is the wrong word, but like move along a ladder of engagement. And using your database for results is a lot more straightforward and easier and takes less time. But using it for process can be more, deeply useful and kind of support the operations of your organization in a different way. So I think they're both great. And just to give an example, like, one would be if you're doing an event, The results-based approach would just be to enter everyone who came, right? But the process-based approach would be to mark everyone who is invited and then track any follow-ups you did for the invitations and whether they said they were coming or they said they weren't coming and why. And, you could get as detailed as you want. And then also track, who showed up and who said they were going to show up and didn't, so you have a more full picture, and you've also used it to kind of manage your recruitment process for that event all the way through. And so both approaches are totally valid, and it really just, it has to do with capacity and what you need to get out of the database. So I think it's just something that's really important to think about, which is the right approach for your organization, and that not to be too ambitious with it. That's actually the next tip, especially if your organization is new to CRM. Don't get too aspirational. Focus on what you need right now and achieve that, and then you can build on it. I love what the Defenders folks said, but thou shalt iterate. And it's totally true. You're always going to be wanting to make sure that your database remains aligned with your work, and that means some ongoing improvements and changes. So you don't have to do everything right away. And the danger with saying, oh, we're going to have a CRM, and that means we're going to be able to do all these different things, so let's plan for that, is that then you plan for your aspirational things and you neglect your immediate needs. And I've seen that happen. And dreaming big is great because it's inspiring and it can help you see the possibilities and benefits down the road. But capacity is always an issue. So I would always say focus on the aspirational, focus on what you need now, and keep the aspirational, on a list somewhere, but don't try to plan too much for it. And I think how that connects to the results versus process is that a lot of organizations think they want to use a CRM to hold their process, but actually they don't have the capacity to do that. And trying to do more than you have the capacity for tends to just get people frustrated with the CRM, and then they disinvest in it, and then you have a tool that no one is using, and then you've just kind of spent a lot of time and energy and potentially money on something that's not actually benefiting your organization. So being realistic and starting small, I think, is a great strategy to ensure that your tools get used. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening. And back to you, Kristen, for questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Really good tips. Okay, now we're going to move into questions. Hopefully we get some questions from the audience. You can tweet us your questions by using the hashtag Huradox. Please, anything related to what we talked about here today. You could also send me an email at kristen@huradox.org. You can also find us on YouTube. There's a chat box on YouTube that we just found, so you could chat with us. And you can find that link to the YouTube if you look at the Huradox hashtag on Twitter. There's a link there. And I don't see any questions yet. So, and I have a bunch of them, but I would like to kind of open it up to you guys, the presenters first. Do you have any burning questions for each other? Okay. That's okay. Lisa?
Hello.
Oh, Neil, did you have a question?
Yeah, Kristen, I have a question for everybody. And thank you, Lisa. The three of us were writing down all of your tips, I think verbatim. They really important. So one of your points was about having an owner of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if in your experience, if the owner has always been like a technical person, because in our experience, that's been the case. And we're working with a few other organizations to help them set up databases. And it always seems to be the technical person who ends up being in the lead. But the issue of strategy and culture change the technical person often isn't able to drive that. So I was just wondering if you also have other examples where it's not the technical people who are the owners.
Yeah, that is a great point, Neil. Thank you. I think ultimately it doesn't matter whether it's a technical person or not. I think what's important is that whoever it is has access to technical support if they need it. Often I've seen it be a program person paired with an implementation partner, like a tech support firm, that helps, with the back end, while they kind of focus on interfacing with their staff and collecting the program needs. I think it often does end up on the technical person's plate, although a lot of organizations I work with don't even really have a technical person, or there's a range. When you say technical person, that can be such a spectrum of people. So I think sometimes a team works really well also. That there's one person who kind of holds the project management and implementation pieces and the relationship with the tech support provider, but then they're part of a database team that includes program folks and fundraising folks, all of all the people who do the actual activities in the database. And I find that works really well. I think there are really as many ways to structure it that can work as there are organizational structures and organizational cultures. So yeah, I think finding what works for your organization, it's really open. You can get creative with it, and just thinking about, you need to have someone who kind of understands how the data is structured and what that means for the kinds of reports you can get out. And then you need to have someone who understands the strategy and what the end users need, as far as data collection in the field. And as long as you can cover that, it really doesn't matter who.
Thanks, Lisa. Chris,
I would add on that a little bit if I could. In our experience with a lot of the groups with whom we work, you're spot on that you need to have both political leadership and technical leadership. There's, the Civi, despite its cumbersome nature, as all CRMs are cumbersome, is not a technically difficult thing to manage. Somebody who's comfortable with, say, managing a website through WordPress or something like that will be able to learn. To use Civi. But to be successful, it's such a huge organizational change problem that if you do not have top-level political buy-in, then it won't succeed. Working in Ukraine with about a dozen different political factions, some of them have succeeded and some of them have failed. And the ones that have failed were, I would characterize more often ones where there were sharp technical people who were enthusiastic about the kind of the gee whiz capabilities of Civi, but had not necessarily brought along for the ride the people who had to understand how to make that happen or what the potential payout for them was. For a political party, if you organize and target and message better, then you win more. So make sure that for the senior leadership, they understand that a successful CRM implementation means that they will be successful in whatever their goals are.
And Chris, when you work with these groups, is there usually one person that kind of owns the CRM, or is it a team of people, or is it like you guys that kind of, respond to the questions and challenges that groups are facing?
Yeah, I mean, so there's as many different ways of doing it as there are different organizations out there. But what tends to be most effective is if you have some sort of partnership where, especially at the beginning, where there is like a technical person and a kind of a strategic leader person who's able to handle that they get the ball rolling. And it's worth emphasizing that the initial hump is colossal to try and collect and clean all of your contacts and get them in there. And that's where people are going to get disillusioned and have some trouble. But once you get through that first part, you can be successful. But generally speaking, you do need to have somebody who is sort of the shepherd or the owner, somebody who's really dedicated to the success of the project and able to kind of emphasize it with their group and kind of lean on people to make things happen. If you don't have somebody who is specifically responsible, I'd like to comment earlier, having it in people's work plan and job descriptions. Like if you don't have somebody who's specifically responsible, it ends up being one of those things that all of us should do and therefore none of us do it.
Mm-hmm. Helix, how does it work where you are? Do you have, like, I'm imagining it could be somebody in fundraising, could be someone in IT, it could be you. Maybe you guys have a communications person or a database person that kind of owns this?
I am definitely our shepherd. We're a really small staff, so there's about 11 of us right now. And so we're not, I don't think we have the same kind of like interpolitical climate that larger organizations might have. But yeah, so I definitely manage our database. I'm the shepherd. I'm the one who's pushing it. And then we focused a lot on getting buy-in from our kind of like higher level staff. Our executive director was a big push for the project, for the database overhaul project. And so he generates a lot of the push into getting people to use it, as well as our fundraising manager, who also has the most immediate need for the database. So she's able to really push people into using the database more. And so those are some of our like focused culture shifters.
Yeah.
At the org, but it's definitely, at the end of the day, it's me managing it.
Okay. Great. Any other thoughts on this question about kind of who is responsible for this ultimately at your organization? I want to move on, unless there are other questions that you guys have for each other, I was going to move on to the process of selecting the CRM. I would be curious to know, like Helix and Neil and Miriam and Leon, how did you go about selecting Civi CRM? Did you look at other platforms? How long did it take? What was it like? Was your whole team involved? If you could share a little bit of insight on that, that'd be really helpful. Helix, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I think one big factor is that we actually worked with Lisa in a consulting relationship. And so she worked with me, and then I relayed information onto our organization as a whole. We didn't really look at anything that wasn't severe or sticking it out with Salesforce. And it went in I didn't think we were going to end up moving from Salesforce. I was like, we're already in it. We'll probably just stay in it. But then at the end of the day, when we were looking at like what would really best suit our needs, what would feel really comfortable for us, Civi kind of won on all of those points. So I don't actually have a lot of experience with really shopping CRMs in that way then. For us, we just needed something that was very robust and highly customizable so that we could do a lot of different things in it. And that didn't channel us into kind of one setup or the other. I will say that like at MMP, we do use Action Network when we're running petitions, because it's really built for running petitions and being able to have people sign petitions and then send emails or letters directly to representatives, that kind of thing. And so we could have decided to build up Action Network, but that wouldn't have met our needs in terms of fundraising, in terms of really tracking the robust information about people we wanted, et cetera.
Okay, interesting, thanks. And your website, you already mentioned that it integrates so well with Civi CRM. Are you using Drupal or WordPress?
We're on WordPress, and we actually, we were on Drupal. We actually moved into WordPress alongside the Civi overhaul. Though Civi works well with both Drupal and WordPress, we just wanted to move into WordPress because it was easier for us to manage on our end.
Okay, cool. Neil, Miriam, Leon, can you guys unmute and talk a little bit about why you chose Civi CRM?
So we were using a like the Heradox human rights database called OpenEFSIS for 4 years, and I would characterize the feeling around it as being some kind of a stalemate. It was there, we used it because we had to use it. There wasn't a lot of positivity around it, and it just wasn't performing what we needed to do. And the option was to renew our efforts to redevelop it, pay for some changes, create new responsibilities and documentation and everything, or switch to something else. So we really sat down, we analyzed the pros and cons of 3 systems. That was OpenEFSIS, Martis, and CiviCRM. And when we looked at all of them, it was the same finding that everyone else has said, is that they all suck. There's no magic choice which is going to be easy. So we couldn't really make a decision based on the pros and cons. And we made a visit to another organization which does similar work to us, and they use CiviCRM. Walked us through how they use it, how it affects all the different departments of the organization. And so that was really the deciding factor, was that we could use it for our capacity building trainings. We could use it to track our grants and activities and supports. So it just met more of the organizational needs than the other options.
Okay. And do you guys work pretty closely with the CiviCRM development team?
Not at all. So we've been just winging it by ourselves, and we don't have any external technical support. And so that's like the next step for us will be finding some consultants or contractors to work on it, and just start getting templates made and getting bug fixes for these small things that bother us. But we've really done it without resources up to now. And finally, we've like long-term fundraising. We've started to put in some lines to pay for development and support. Yeah, and that's starting to turn around now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. It might be worth noting that CiviCRM is free and open source. That also makes it a pretty popular choice for groups. And I find that there's a lot of support out there. I've lived in their CiviCRM IRC channel. They have an online forum where you can ask questions. They have a great updated manual, like their book that's online. There's just a lot of resources out there to get help, and thank God, I really appreciate it, because it's a little harder to find that kind of support with Salesforce. There are a lot of people that know Salesforce and that can help you with it, but you usually have to pay them. Chris, did you have something to add?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So we've been working closely with the core team since we first dove into Civi a few years ago. And because it is free open source software, one of the real beauties is that we can solve our own problems. And we can then share those solutions with others. So, Neil, as you're going through this process, I know that the core team is very interested in the use cases that we experience out there in the real world, especially as they try and pivot from something that was built by and for nerds in Silicon Valley to reach global audience. And so, there are interesting opportunities these days for trying to build stuff into funding. Many of the donor community these days are very interested in things that are open source. It gives them a sense of better sustainability. But if we can take and leverage our contributions, the things that are scratching our own itches, but then get them upstreamed into the core Civi base, then these can benefit a much wider community, which is a real multiplier for the sort of work that we do.
Great points. Okay, we have a question from the audience. When you work with one person, so like that one kind of owner, shepherd in your organization, how do you make sure that the solution and customization of the CRM corresponds to the whole organization's needs and not just built based on that one person? I could see how this could be the case if that one person is in fundraising or that one person is in communications. It could really be geared towards that kind of effort. Lisa, do you have any kind of insight on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key with having the shepherd, and I love that term, and I'm going to start using it instead of database owner. I'm going to say database shepherd. That it's actually of their job as the shepherd is to be the connector between the staff and the database. So really, what that person does is talk about the database needs and ask about database needs to everyone on the staff. I mean, particularly if you are starting, if you're either moving to a new system because your existing system doesn't work, or you want to instantiate a system in your organization, the first step is really to talk to, in a small organization, every single person, and in a larger organization, a representative subset of all the roles and kind of levels of technical ability and technical facility, not technical, but like comfort with interfaces on the staff, and ask, what are the daily tasks that you need to do with this information? How does it come to you? Who else in the organization needs it? What kind of report do you need about it afterwards? Like, what are the processes that involve this information? Sets of questions like that. And so you talk to everyone, and sometimes one-on-one works best. Sometimes you want to have, meetings of people who play the same role or in the same department, and you just basically take notes on everything they say, and then, take it back and digest it into, okay, here are the common themes. Here's something that everyone needs. Here's something this department needs. These are the pieces of information that we need to track, and here's how they relate to each other. Like, oh, a person belongs to a household, and there can be many people in a household, and here's the information that we need about each person in each household. You kind of document everything, and then that will guide you in, it can help guide you in how to choose your system, and also, how to configure your system. So it's really the database shepherd. It's not that they own the database, like they're in charge of it and it's for them, but that they are really in charge of making sure it's meeting organizational needs. And that means being really user-centered about it and talking to their coworkers pretty much constantly about it. And I'm guessing that that the other folks on the call have things to say about how that has worked in their organizations.
Does anybody else want to jump in here? Okay, Lisa, I think you did a great job of covering that. Thank you. Another question that I have, but you guys should let me know if you have questions for each other again. I just generally want to know, what do you wish that you would have known before you started out again? Like Defend Defenders, before you even went down the OpenEvSys road. I mean, what do you wish you would have known when you guys started to build a CRM for your organization?
Give me a few more years, and maybe I'll get back to you. I don't know. I feel like some of these lessons were pretty obvious. Like I can think back 5 years ago, and
Neil, you're breaking up quite a bit, unfortunately. Maybe we'll come back to you in a few minutes. Helix, is there anything that you wish you guys would have known?
I'm with Neil as well. Like, give me a couple years and I'm sure there'll be a lot of things. I think right now I'm just thinking about like how much time and repetition it takes us to get used to it, which is something that we knew, but we didn't necessarily know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how it like really impacts your day-to-day work.
Yeah, and how the like culture shift and the transition, that part has been really challenging.
Yeah. Chris, did you want to add anything here?
Yeah. Big. I agree completely, Felix, about the time required. This is, this is like your New Year's resolution is you're going to use a CRM. You don't just do that at one time. You have to work on it steadily over a period of weeks and months and years. The other thing that was the biggest surprise to us, I think, it's not a surprise anymore, is every organization we go into, it takes forever to collect all the contacts necessary. So just for everyone, just time to collect, correlate, deduplicate, and clean up your information before bulk uploading it into the system. So make sure that you give yourself plenty of runway on that.
Good point. I've spent many, many weeks cleaning data for organizations. Neil, are you back with us?
Yes, we're here. Sorry, I guess we're having connection issues.
Oh, we can hear you now, though.
Okay, I don't know where I dropped off.
Kind of just at the very beginning.
Oh, yeah, well, it's probably fine because I don't think I was being very insightful. I was just saying that the lessons that I still feel are important were really apparent at the beginning. Hello?
Yeah, sorry, it takes me a second to unmute. Yeah. Oh, we lost him. Lisa, what have you learned from your work with organizations about this? Like what, now that you've done this a few times, what do you always start out with when you go into an organization to help with the CRM?
Well, I think a lot of what I've learned, first of all, just really echoes what everyone has said, is that it is a major organizational investment to do it. And, you don't have to have a lot of money, but you do have to have a lot of time and energy for it. So I really want to emphasize that. Although, obviously money helps because it can help you, get more time and energy, by hiring and, by getting external support. But yeah, it really is a major organizational undertaking. And if there aren't people at all levels of the organization supporting it, within leadership and kind of on the ground, the folks who will be using it, it's very difficult to make it work. I think really most of what I have learned are, the things that I shared in my presentation about the things you need to do and the things that support success. One thing I'll also mention, because people have talked so much about the culture change and, getting people to adopt new tools and practices is just known to be a really hard problem. And there's a body of knowledge and a field of practice called change management that addresses that. And there are a lot of different methodologies that people use and a lot of ways that, there are a lot of resources out there, a lot of them free, and a lot of them really aimed at the corporate world and kind of large corporations, but that still have a lot of relevance to social justice work and human rights work, because they're just kind of about human nature and what it takes people to change. And, organizations are always groups of people. And I have resources I can share over email about change management, and I have my email address in the chat. So just that there are methodologies that can be brought to bear on kind of all of the problems that that people have talked about.
Mm-hmm. And someone else that I was chatting with had mentioned that, a colleague of mine, that the things that we're talking about here, especially when it comes to like change management, relates to so many different information management challenges and initiatives. So it's not just CRMs, it's a big one, but these are things that can be used when you're rolling out a lot of different technologies and management initiatives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say it should be used with anything, any information system, but also any change, any big change in your organization that affects how people do their work. You know, so it's even really, it's really useful for non-information system changes too, like organizational structure changes, anything.
Great, thanks. Neil, is there anything that you wanted to add to get the last word in there? Or I could just close it up.
No, we're just really happy to be part of the conversation. We've picked up a lot of tips from everyone else. So thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Heurodox, for hosting this.
Well, thank you all for presenting your experiences with us today. It's been really useful and insightful, and I look forward to putting together the summary of what was discussed here. Now I have a slide just that says going forward, and it's a picture of our 5-month-old nugget, Nolan. Sorry, but I just can't help it. I am going to be putting together the summary of this call, and we'll also have a recording of this available on our website. So that will always be there for a resource for any of you if you want to use that. But the bigger picture here is that this is the first of hopefully many online discussions that Heurodox will be hosting around information management, human rights documentation. And I want to find out, like, what are the information challenges that your organization is facing that we could discuss in this way. So please be in touch with me. I'm Kristen@heurodox.org, or you could tweet at us using Heurodox, the hashtag, or our Twitter handle. We're going to be hosting a webinar each month with different practitioners, and I am definitely looking for volunteers, so please get in touch. Hopefully next month we'll be talking about digitizing documents, and we'll have a whole other crew of presenters for that. I'm also interested in doing some ongoing research on CRMs, and it would be great to have just like an ongoing discussion. Like maybe we could check in 6 months with, you know, another group of presenters, or find out what's changed in your organizations, the 4 of you, and how things are changing with the CRMs and how you're implementing it and what you're learning. So I hope that this is just the start of a long conversation, and we can continue to learn from each other's experiences and knowledge. So thank you so much for presenting this, and I hope that you'll come back and participate in many other discussions. And for all of you in the audience, thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Thanks so much.
Thank you for doing this, Kristen. This was great.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks very much.
Bye.